So in the operating theatres, we have highly emotionally charged situations where people are trying to produce good outcomes amongst difficult situations, and we're dealing with people all the time trying their best to do their best. And in amongst that, we've got increasing noise and distraction in the operating theatre. Since the early 70s, we've become so bound with technology. So from simple monitoring equipment now to 2015, we're surrounded by equipment that beeps, buzzes and bangs. We've also accepted, good, bad or otherwise, the fact that we are entitled to have mobile phones in our operating theatres, and that's another undue distraction. We have our PDMs, our laptops, and all these things create noise and distraction. And it was about 2 years ago when we were further developing our operating theatres that I sat in the corner quietly and listened to the noise and distraction that was pervading our environment. And firstly, I looked at the permissible noises that we suddenly were given, credit to, saying this is acceptable. Well, was it? Then I tried to look at the way people navigated noise and distraction at those times, what tools were available through departmental policy or just basic language-based safety tools, things that people would say and do when they wanted attention. And it turned out that what people did was either they would be very, very quiet and just go into their shell and not disclose a difficult situation, or they would become so emotionally charged they would explode. And they would tell the people around them, would you just shut up? Or would you, and they would use a whole lot of expletive words. So at a time when you need a team to be focused, what you've suddenly done is dropped a hand grenade amongst these people and they've just exploded. So these people move away from you and they don't want to help you at all. So I thought that that's pretty unacceptable in healthcare. We surely must have a language-based safety tool that we can use. So Pete and I got together, had a chat about it, and thought, well, within our own organisation, there surely must be policy documents how to control noise and distraction at key times. But there wasn't anything. So then we sort of thought about outside the box, what could we do to find information about language-based safety tools? So on a cold winter's night, I sat at the computer and the kids were in bed, and I typed into the computer, into a Google search engine, the things that we did at work. And I pressed return, and all of a sudden I'm surrounded by this screen with red flashing lights, and I was on the bondage website. And it turns out that we have a lot in common with the bondage industry. We restrain people, we put them into unusual positions, we attack them with inanimate objects, we give them drugs to make them compliant, and finally we all hide behind masks. But the fact is, within the bondage industry, they actually have acknowledged that they need a safety word, a word that said between consenting couples produces an immediate and unquestioned response. We couldn't model ourselves off the bondage industry, but the fact is they do have language-based safety tools. Words that when said at key and pivotal times produce an immediate and unquestioned response. So we thought that let's look at other industries. So we happened to come across the airline industry. We in the operating theatre are so aligned to the airline industry. We do things that are highly technical. We do things that have to be done in a timely manner, things that have to be done with a team-based approach, and things that we do, we have passengers, we have patients, and we have to arrive them at their destination safely. So we started exploring the airline industry and found that within the 70s and 80s, planes were flying out of the sky for no apparent reason. Wasn't that the bolts were missing, it wasn't because they were running out of fuel, they just crashed. And so the National Transport Safety Board commissioned NASA to look into what was happening. They looked at flight box recorders and tried to work out what was going wrong, and it discovered that pilots were being distracted at key and pivotal times of the flight, and they were being distracted when they should have been looking at how to fly the aeroplane. And so they developed a ruling, which was called the Sterile Cockpit Environment, which has been upgraded now in 2014 to include a few more things. But the Sterile Cockpit Environment was an environment that was enacted where everyone was just flying the plane. They weren't doing anything else. And that time was from the time the plane was under its own power. So from the time it taxied to the time it reached a ceiling of 10,000 feet. So anywhere below 10,000 was a time when everyone was attentive to the task at hand. They were aware that they were flying at a critical phase of flight and they should not be distracted. So I sat down with Pete and said, look, we've got this word, this thing called below 10,000. The things that we do in healthcare are very, very similar. How about we try and market this? So Pete, being the marketing guru, sat down, and as you'll discover today, he's had an amazing way of putting below 10,000 in a way that's appealing to people. So what we've done is that we've marketed below 10,000 as a language-based safety tool, a word that when said at key and pivotal times will flag it to the group to create situational awareness that we're doing something that's really, really important. The good thing about below 10,000 is it's non-conflictory, it doesn't offend anybody, and it doesn't specifically target one person in the room. Below 10,000 doesn't arouse suspicion in a conscious patient. These patients don't know what below 10,000 means. It is a word that cannot produce any adverse outcomes, even in a team of people that aren't educated. You can't give below 10,000 adrenal or below 10,000 CPR. It's a word that, if you don't understand it, it can't produce an adverse outcome. But in a team of people that are aware of what it's meant to do, it will produce an immediate and unquestioned response. And below 10,000 is non-religious. Below 10,000 doesn't require batteries, and below 10,000 is just 3